Hello, good evening sa ating mga online viewers. Welcome to Throwback Kasaysayan. Ako si Jio Guiang, Assistant Professor mula sa UP Department of History. At gaya ng binabanggit ko, every episode natin, Throwback Kasaysayan is all about identifying present-day social issues and locating kung ano yung historical about them. And then we also discuss various topics about Philippine history, about the discipline. And ito nga yung tampok natin na topic for tonight. We delve in doon sa issue ng disiplina ng kasaysayan at kumusta na ba ang disiplina ng kasaysayan vis-a-vis the pandemic, no? Bago tayo magtungo sa ating paksa for tonight, alamin muna natin ang statistics ng COVID sa Pilipinas ngayong April 15, Thursday, 2021. Ang total active cases na naitala ng DOH sa Pilipinas ay umabot na sa 183,527. That brings up the total number of cases in the Philippines ng COVID-19 to 904,285. Malapit-lapit na po sa 1,000,000 mark, no? With the DOH recording an additional 11,429 cases just for today. Ang total death toll ng COVID-19 sa Pilipinas ay umabot na sa 15,594, with the DOH recording an additional 148 deaths for today. The total recoveries of COVID-19 sa Pilipinas ay 705,164, with the DOH recording an additional 856 recoveries just for today. Yung statistics po for April 15, 2021, Thursday. Lagi pong updated ang COVID statistics sa Facebook page ng Quarantalk Media. You can visit their Facebook page. Lagi pong may daily updates dyan. Okay. Interesting ang topic natin for tonight. Aalamin natin, we delve into the discipline of history, no? So para dyan, para alamin ang topic natin for tonight, alamin natin kung ano ang pulso ng bayan. Okay, topic for tonight, no? Sana ay nakikita ninyo sa inyong mga screens, no? Naka-share. Ito ay isang article, online article na nakuha ko mula sa University of Westminster, no? Ever since nagkaroon kasi ng lockdowns because of the COVID-19 pandemic, natigil yung normal routine natin, nagbago lahat, nag-shift to work from home. Kahit yung even in the in the education sector, we were forced to try and test new platforms that is done online. And this is very challenging, most especially with let's say graduate school or undergraduate studies, where universities and colleges require students to do research or papers, no? So ilan ito sa mga concerns na nag-arise ever since nagkaroon ng pandemic, no? At dito ngayon papasok yung role ng digital archives. At gaya ng mga nakapost sa ating publicity materials ever since this afternoon, no, to promote this show for tonight, ang ating paksa ngayon is research in the time of lockdowns caused by the pandemic. The uses of digital archives, yan ang ating aalamin for tonight, hindi ba? Kasi wala namang choice ang ating mga researchers, especially mga graduate students natin, mga nagpi-PhD at MA at PhD. They need to produce research papers kasi research-oriented ideally ang mga research universities, kaya nga tinawag na research universities, no? And where do we find sources? Kasi madalas on-site yung alam nating paghahanap ng mga batis. We go to the archives, we go to the library to locate sources for our papers, for our research. But ever since the pandemic happened, hazard na siya. It's a health hazard to go to on-site libraries, to go to the libraries, to archives because of the virus going around, no? So andito tayo ngayon sa digital archives. Hindi na bago yung online sources or digital archives. For example, isa sa mga nagamit ko sa ilan sa mga papel na research na nagawa ko over the pandemic is yung Internet Archive. Easily accessible online. Magta-type ka lang ng specific source na kailangan mo, nakalagay nga dito, di ba? Ito yung sinesearch ko at that time. Report of the Governor Generals. So maraming mga dami yan, tsatsagain mo lang talaga. Dami yan, lalabas, naka ano dyan, specify kung saang specific library or archive nakuha. yung specific source, no, dito sa na naka-upload sa Internet Archive. Okay? At marami pang iba na tatalakay ng ating guests for tonight. For example, ito, nasa University of Michigan, no? I won't delve into this kasi tatalakayin ito ng ating guests for tonight. Okay? So, ito ating magiging paksa at sana sa mga tagapakinig natin, online viewers natin, sana maraming mga mga research, mga graduate students and undergraduate students who are interested to do research work but cannot actually go to libraries and archives, but they have to resort to online materials, digital archives. So, we can learn so many things about our discussion for tonight. So, para alamin ang ating guests, magtungo tayo, alamin kung sino ang ating mga guests, magtungo tayo sa ating throwback lecture. Okay, yung dalawa sa guests natin, I'm sure nakita na ng ilan sa ating mga online viewers sa publicity materials natin. This is the first time that they will discuss or they are here in Throwback Kasaysayan. Mga colleagues ko sila sa history department, of course, no. Ang una nating guest is assistant professor din katulad ko mula sa Department of History. Siya ay nagtapos ng kanyang masterado sa Ateneo de Manila University and currently nagtuturo siya ng General Philippine History. I think nagtuturo din siya ng Asian History ngayon. General Asian History, CAS2 nga, hindi CAS1 Philippine History sa UP, no, online, no. Ang kanyang research interest ay demographic history of the Philippines. Let's all welcome Assistant Professor Nicholas C. Si Hobie C. Hi, Hobie.
Hi, Gio.
Kumusta, Hobie? Kumustahin ko muna si Hobie. Kumusta naman ang online classes? Kumusta ang online classes?
They're going okay. Takes some getting used to, but yeah, teaching Asian history for the first time. So
first time. At medyo mahirap pa kasi bagong platform. Di ba?
Yeah. So we did Chinese history this week, for example.
Kung pagtuturo lang yan, napapasok ka sa classroom, di ba mas madali sana, kaya lang.
Yeah. I missed the blackboard.
Totoo. And then yung wala ka pa makikita pag nagle-lecture ka, di ba? Naka-off cam yung mga tao, di mo pwedeng pilitin na mag-on cam, no? So yun, nabanggit ko nga, this is your first time to guest. So, chill lang tayo dito, di ba? I'm sure napanood na ni Hobie yung ilan sa mga episodes ng Throwback, di ba? So, kwentuhan lang talaga, no? Yeah. So, Hobie, si Hobie, pag nakakausap ko sa at least nung time before the pandemic, ang daming mga kinikwento sa akin ni Hobie, mga online references, accessible online, yung mga digital archives na tatalakayin natin for tonight, no? But before we get into that, papakilala natin ang ating pangalawang guest, esteemed guest natin, si Sir, hindi ba? Si Sir ay nagtapos ng kanyang doktorado mula sa National University of Singapore, no? And then ang kanyang research interests ay hanapin natin. Ang kanyang research interest ay environmental history. Actually, nag-uusap kami kanina ni Sir. We should come up with an episode about environmental history, which is a very good idea, very interesting idea. Environmental history, history of science, and diplomatic history. Let's all welcome Dr. RUEL PAGUNSAN. Hi, Sir RUEL.
Hello, Gio. Hello, Hobie. Good evening sa lahat. And thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Sir. Ang laking pasasalamat ng pagpapa-unlock ni Sir sa ating invitation kasi marami siyang klase today, tuloy-tuloy. At kakagaling lang ni Sir sa kanyang graduate class. Kumusta po, Sir, ang experience ng graduate class remotely? I'm sure this is not the first time na ginawa niyo ito, Sir. But yung general experience. Kasi usually, pag kinakamusta ko yung ilang mga guests ko dito na junior faculty, we teach undergraduate students. But how is the experience for graduate students in an online setup?
Actually, mas convenient in terms of travel, in terms of siguro preparation, kasi yung biyahe ko ay parang pwede rin siyang pahinga or pag-prepare ng discussion. Pero at the same time, syempre dahil online ito, very limited. At siguro mas hindi ko pagamay yung kung paano ba yung interaction, no? Because yung nature mismo ng graduate classes ay interaction. Syempre, hindi lamang dapat one way na natuturo yung students, no? So, syempre may iba't ibang paraan ngayon ng pagpa-participate yung mga bata. May chat box, may personal na magtatanong, no, sa video, no. So it's a new process. It's exciting. Pero yun nga, nami-miss ko na din
yung face to face.
No?
Totoo yun.
No, nakaka-miss din yung face-to-face setup.
Mas lalo na pag graduate school kasi at least nung bago ako nagtapos ng MA, wala pa naman pandemic noon. Discursive talaga yung MA or PhD courses. Yun siguro yung medyo missing sa setup natin ngayon na mag-iintay ka siguro ng may magsasalita. may lag time sa Zoom, hindi ba gano'n? No? Sana makabalik tayo uli doon sa ganong setup. Now, sirs, doon sa topic natin for tonight, very timely siya. Actually, dapat matagal na natin tong naitampok sa Throwback Kasaysayan ever since nagsimula yung pandemic. Kasi ito talagang dilemma din ng mga graduate students, most especially, and ng mga colleagues natin sa academe. Nagkakaroon nga ng usapin minsan amongst sa mga colleagues natin, 'di ba, sa na parang ay sarado yung National Archives, ganyan. Paano hindi pa mga kailangan nating sources, medyo hindi pa siya na-digitize, hindi ba? So maganda yung topic natin for tonight is about digital archives and where do we get the sources that we need for specific topics that we do research on. At least for tonight, at least for the discipline of history. Di ba, yung itatampok natin. But of course, other disciplines in the social science could siguro get several materials from the digital archives that we will discuss for tonight. So ang unang tanong natin from the top of our heads is, ano ba talaga yung digital archives? Hindi ba? What are the pros and cons of digital archives as opposed to on-site archives? Hindi ba? How different is the experience? I think maraming masishare si Hobie at si Sir RUEL dito kasi talagang they visit on-site archives not only in the Philippines but also abroad. And how is the experience changing when you do digital archives, especially in the time of the pandemic na wala ka namang choice but to go digital, hindi ba, find these resources online. So, kahit sino po pwedeng sumagot, ano ba talaga yung digital archive? Ano yung pros and cons? How is it different from the on-site archives?
Sige, ako naman una.
Sige.
So, I think isang aspect ng digital archives ay yung research sa end ng mga gumagamit nito ng students, ng researchers. So, isang aspect nito ay isang research method, no? Using archival materials, meaning manuscripts and photographs available online. So they can be accessed through the online portal of archival institutions. Pwedeng ma-access yung materials. One way is through download through JPEG or PDF, and another way is streaming. No? So, pwedeng mo i-browse lamang yung dokumento but you cannot download them. No? Siguro ang pinaka obvious na gamit ng digital archives is yung personal access, no? Yung personal access sa mga archival collection na ito without the on-site visit, no? So yung problema sa paghingi ng research funds, ng travel funds, no? Hindi ito problema, no? Yung pag-aayos ng bureaucratic requirements sa first time mo nagagamit ng archives ay you don't need to do this, no? So basically, it's archival research in your laptop. As long as you have your internet source, you can access these primary sources. No? So talagang very helpful siya, beneficial, no? Sa mga researchers as students. No? Siguro ang nakikita kong cons in terms of using archival online sources ay hindi pa lahat halos ng mga manuscripts no. So while there are available manuscripts sa
That's true.
portal, I think yung mga ginawang available ng mga institutions sa internet ay ito yung mga previously published na rin or previously na ginamit na, no? Kaya yung ibang mga dokumento ay restricted yung access, no? So sabihin, not all manuscripts are available, no? So pag meron kang paksa talaga na ginagawa, kailangan mo pa rin pumunta sa on-site location, no? So I think may cons, pero I think para sa akin overall ay maganda, no? Beneficial, helpful para sa students of history, sa researchers ang digital archives. I think meron pang dadagdag si Hobie.
In terms of experience din yung actually the experience of going into the archives, aanuhin mo yung mga files, di ba? Parang I think yun yung mga bundles, di ba? Yun yung isang bagay na sa experience mo, Hobie, ikaw yung nanggaling sa
walang amag sa digital archives. You don't breathe anything in. It's not dusty. I think one pro is that in terms of the document, mas na-preserve yung document. Hindi siya at risk of theft. Hindi rin siya at risk of damage sa pagka-handle ng mga iba't ibang researcher. Because when you use documents sa archive, pag binuksan mo yung bundle, there will always be crumbs that come from the document because of you, because of the previous researchers. And then after you finish with the bundle, they'll come in with a broom and they have to sweep up all the crumbs. Parang nasasayangan ako sa nawawalan data. So in the digital setup, that doesn't happen, thankfully. And you can also, okay, so there's that. And then I think it's also in the more experiential side of things. You also, I miss the lunch times. I miss the lunch times at the archive. Because kapag nasa archive ka, madalas 5 kayo or something, and then you're all working more or less in the same century. And then siguro habang nag-research kayo, tahimik lang, but you have to eat sometime, and you may as well eat with everyone there. And then during lunch, you exchange ideas and you converse. Yung pag sa online na archive, digital, it's just you know, in your room. Yeah, you figure things out on your own. So yun.
I agree with Hobie. Yung networking, no? Parang sa conference din. Sa conferences or archival research na on-site, I think isang malaking pros dito ay syempre, you will be meeting fellow researchers, historians, no, and perhaps they can provide leads and references, no. At sometimes itong pag-uusap na ito ay nagiging long-term na connection din natin sa halimbawa sa future projects, whether conferences or publication, no. So talagang yung networking na maaaring ma-create, no, sa personal visit, talagang I think isa yun sa mga, kasi talagang we have to really accept that sometimes yung knowledge, yung process ng mga dokumento hindi yan gagawa ng isahan lang. You have to really meron kang interaction, no?
wala kang tulong, kumbaga minsan pag nag-uusap-usap kayo parang makatulungan ka nung katabi mo ito ikaw lang mag-isa.
I read a lot of manuscripts, right? Like the old handwriting, and the way I learned actually was at the archive. Yung katabi, yung seatmate ko, si Rose Mendoza, and she would every time I'd have a question, I'd ask her, and she would slowly teach me how to read it. So yeah, so that kind of learning from the others around you is always nice.
But probably, sirs, can we say ba na with digital archives, at least yung mga na-digitize na sources, it's a sort of democratizing archival materials. I mean, ibang level pa, well, when we say democratizing, that's a huge term eh. Ibang level yung access to online source. How do you use it? You have to train the user eh. I mean, pwedeng internet savvy ka, pero when you get into, kahit ako eh, nung unang na-introduce sa kanyang Paris, parang, paano mo navigate to? Parang
Yeah.
ganun, ang daming factors eh. But so can we say that na it's a sort of it's a step towards making it widely available to everyone.
Yeah, as Sir Ruel said, the large expense disappears, and all the red tape disappears of getting to see materials that are abroad.
Totoo.
I think
But
yes,
I
sige.
agree with you, no? So medyo of course medyo cautious tayo sa term na yung how the digital archives democratize the access, no, pero yung isang step siya towards public appreciation, no, especially sa mga less developed countries na especially limbawa yung continued legacy ng yung imperial knowledge production, diba, na sa case ng mga former colonies, no, they don't have the materials needed to create their own histories, no, because kahit pa tapos na yung kolonyalismo, ay wala rin sa kanila ang mga dokumento, no, nasa dating mga colonial masters, no. So isang paraan, I think isang step ito para yung mga hindi kaya, no, ay magamit ito, no. Siguro hindi lamang siya para sa history researchers, no. Medyo limitado talaga, pero halimbawa sa mga guro din na gustong halimbawa ipakita yung isang example ng primary source, no. O kaya yung isang yung local government na sa kanilang sariling initiative ay nais bumuo ng kailang local history, no? So I think magandang step ito para hindi para magkaroon ng access at the same time ay ma-empower, no, yung karaniwang tao na makita ang mga dokumento at magamit ito sa kanilang sariling interest.
Ang isa din talagang important siguro na hurdle siguro na kailangan ma-overcome when it comes to digital archives is yung pondo ng digitization, yung digitization projects, no. For example, sa Spain siguro mas silang problema dyan, di ba? Pero sa ibang mga bansa na we have to really allot funds for, because it's careful management of the primary source. Hindi mo naman basta ilagay yan sa scanner tapos sa scanner brittle na eh. May mga special tools for that, hindi ba? To digitize the sources. So isa ding usapin niya na in order to make the vision of digital archive successful talaga, yung its full potential, kailangan maglaan ng government or at least private institutions, hindi ba, with the project of digitization. Okay, let's go to the ito very interesting part na to. Saan ba natin makikita yung digital archives na yan sa online, hindi ba? Na merong datos tungkol sa Pilipinas, na may kinalaman sa Philippine history. Si Hobie ay mag-share ngayon ng kanyang screen kasi magbibigay siya ng demo at magbibigay ng mga komento si Hobie at si Ruel tungkol sa paggamit. Siguro parang overview ano yung meron dito, paano siya ginagamit, paano siya ma-access. Sige, Hobie, tingnan natin kung ano yung mga examples na pwede mong ipakita sa ating mga online viewers
The first
regarding.
I'll share here.
So habang nag-share si Hobie, siguro yung tulad ng binanggit kanina, yung maganda yung examples na pinili ay isa nandito sa Pilipinas, isa sa US, isa sa Espanya, no? So maganda yung mga represented, no, sa
well represented
malaking archival institutions.
Okay.
So I guess the first one we have here is from National Library of the Philippines. And so I guess for the viewers, what they can do is they can search for this also at the same time as we go through it. And then we're looking for the digital collection, so that would be here under resources. And once you get to the list, there's actually quite a lot on their list. Some of the things that you find here, which are frequently used in terms of archival sources, are, for instance, the historical data papers. So these are interviews collected by public school teachers in the 50s on the instruction of the national government. So public school teachers from around the country. And you have it at the local level, at the provincial, municipal, and even at the barrio level. You have historical information, you have information on their folklore, and on local practices. So let me open one here. So this is from the barrio of Linawan in Romblon, for instance. Right. So aware of the presence of the Guardia Civiles Datu Linaw rang his agong made of gold, etc. So because these are essentially they come from
nag-open ka
interviews.
ng ano? Nag-open ka ng
sorry.
ano? Hindi siya napakita sa ano para makita
okay.
para makita nung online viewers natin yung nabasa.
Right. So what I'm gonna do. Okay, so it's the sharing that.
Pwedeng doon sa kabilang. Yan.
Yeah, I will share screen.
Habang tino-troubleshoot ni Hobie, sir, kayo ba ay nakagamit na sa online ng National Library?
Yeah. So yung mga although environmental history yung aking topic, no, binisita ko ito, no, for yun nga for local stories, for folklores related to environment, no. So nakita ko yung tiningnan ko personally yung Laguna, no. Kasi naging interest ako sa may interest ako sa mga local stories, folklores about makiling. So ginamit ko basically yung historical data papers, no, related to Laguna, no. So I think may Los Baños dyan, may Bae, no. So I think yung Laguna ang isa sa may maraming entries, yung probinsya ng Laguna ang isa sa may maraming entries, yung mga bayan-bayan, no, sa historical data papers, no. So ayan nata si Hobie.
Ayan.
So I clicked it and I'm gonna go to Laguna and let's see what they have here. And see, not all of it has been uploaded to the website, but these are the towns that are available so far. And for the municipality of Los Baños, you can go to the level of the barrios, and you have that information that Sir Ruel described for different barrios of Los Baños, for instance. And okay, let's open it. There you go. So, as I was saying earlier, these come from interviews done by public school teachers. So the standard cautions that you would have about oral interviews, they would apply, especially because they're not really trained to do a lot of these interviews. Okay, so that is one source that's available via the National Library. But there are actually a lot of other resources on that digital collection. There are a lot of old newspapers from the early 20th century. Usually it's just a couple of issues that are available, but at least you get a glimpse of it. There's also the Otti Bear ethnographic collection that's available here also. And that is actually pretty detailed. And ang daming okay, the font is really small, but at least then you can see there is like a lot.
Ganun siya kadami.
Yeah, all right.
PDF
So,
ng mga to, Hobie.
yes, and there's an option whether you want it in PDF or in JPEG. Now, what I'll do is I'll just show you just one. Now, aside from this, now, okay, let's see the open one.
Ito ay downloadable, Hobie, no?
Yes, they're downloadable. Pero kailangan per page yung pagka-download. So it's actually a bit tedious. Okay, I wanted to show you this one, the weapons and implements made and used in the town of Taal. Let's see if we can open it. Okay.
Taal ay Taal, Batangas.
Taal, Batangas, yes.
Gumagawa ng mga balisong.
Yeah, and so various other things as well. So this data is taken in 1917.
Wow.
And it's available here.
Oh.
Other materials are the Quezon papers are also at least partially available here, and the Osmeña papers and so on. So that's
ilang papers
yes,
about
sir.
Rizal din.
Okay.
About Jose Rizal, mayroon ding papers dyan from this Spanish archives ata nilipat. So may digital collection ng Rizal documents dyan din sa portal na yan.
There are also a lot of maps and Spanish era maps as well. So I saw some like maps of different ports, maps of different cities. Naga, there's a map of Naga in its old name, of Cáceres, for instance. There's a map of that. So there, I mean,
ang daming materials dyan pa lang hindi ba? Pwede ka na maghanap ng research topic mo. Kasi di ba ang unang lagi nating tanong is kung meron kang research topic, meron ka bang sources? What are your sources? Kasi hindi ka naman pwedeng mag-propose na research topic na napakahirap kunin ng sources. Kasi meron kang deadline, for example. So pwedeng mag-explore yung ating mga students, graduate or undergraduate students, and even mga colleagues natin sa educational institutions, na kung meron silang requirement ng research paper, pwede sila mag-explore dito. Ang daming sources for topics. Hindi ba? Andyan yung malalaman mo na, mag-gauge mo na ilan ba yung konti pa, madami. Is it possible na gumawa ng paper tungkol dito sa paksa na ito? Very interesting.
So I thought I'd show another website. I think I'll do Pares first. Okay, Pares. This is a different website. It's called Pares. Pares stands for Portal de Archivos Españoles. So these are state-run archives run by the state, which is the Spanish government. There are many institutions. Their catalog is put online, and nakalagay dun kung alin sa catalog yung na-digitize na. So these are the search boxes, for instance, that you would use, and we'll just look for one. Let's just look for Malong, for instance. Some surname of Andres Malong, who led the revolt in the 1600s. And there will be different entries, and the second and the third entry, for instance, these are not digitized. They're available in the archive itself, but they're not digitized. But this first one, you'll see there's an image next to it. That one is digitized. And when you click the image, that should take you to the document itself. Now, just like the National Library, one at a time yung pag-download ng mga image na to. So it is actually a pain to do. But the images are very crisp. So you can zoom in and really
Wow.
see. Yeah, so
Yung penmanship, yung ink, di ba? Yung paper.
so you'd have to learn how to read the material first. But once you can, this is a very large resource for the Spanish era. And then,
Sige po, Sir Ruel.
Siguro yung overall, nakita ko na when I use the pares, isang trick dito talaga is you know your keywords, no? So if you want to really maximize yung content at yung laman ng pares, you really have to know the keywords, no? Sa mga i-enter mo, no, in order to get the results that you like, no? So minsan kahit yung mga yung similar yung meaning pero na iba yung term sa Espanyol, halimbawa ay minsan yung isang term hindi nakukuha, walang result, pero kapag ginamit yung isang term ay lalabas siya sa pares, no? So isang advice sa mga gagamit ng pares is really to think of the keywords that you have to use, no? You have to key in pares.
And part of that is also thinking of the keywords in terms of what the archivist would put, because yung sinesearch ng website ay yung card catalog ng archive. Hindi siya yung document mismo dahil hindi naman to OCR readable. At totoo din yun para sa National Library of the Philippines na hindi din OCR readable, which is different from the third one that si Gio is asking me to show, which is United States and its territories. Because this one, yung content niya, which is from, the focus is on the decade between 1898 to 1910, but also the years surrounding that decade. Yung mga materials dito, OCR readable na siya. So, kung libro siya, you're able to search through all the text inside the book. So, for instance, I will look for Benito C. Congbian. I will search for him.
Lalabas lahat ng na-hit.
Yeah. And it will say the page number. Well, Benito was not that popular. He only gets 10 results. But when you have this particular source, for instance, and you click it, you can it will tell you what pages he's found on, and when you click the particular page, lalabas na yung particular file, and you can read this page and then click these buttons up top to go to the previous page or to the next page. Yan. Yung pag-download nito, I think it's mano-mano din. To download in bulk, they redirect you to another site called Hahi Trust, and that will allow you to download in bulk for some documents.
Related to that, Hobie, actually, there are also materials in the Michigan website na although page by page yung download dito, but there are sometimes available sa BNE.
BNE.
Online portal ng
National Library of Spain.
Yeah, National Library of Spain. No? So, dito sa portal na ito, you can ask, hindi namin ma-feature ngayong gabi, but there are materials na buong document, buong manuscript, buong libro you can download. No? So, kung mahihirapan kayo sa Michigan website, no? So try to look for a copy of that in BNE, especially for Spanish period documents. Baka meron sa BNE at mas madali i-download, no, compared sa Michigan website.
So, and there are actually a lot of archives. Wait, let me just stop here. Actually, a lot of other archives that have materials on the Philippines. There are Dutch archives, Portuguese archives, Mexican archives that also have online repositories. So yeah.
Sa inyong experience, sige Sir Ruel, go. Sige po.
Yes, to add siguro, nandyan din yung Filipinas Heritage, no? Meron silang through yung browsing lang, you cannot download pa, pero maganda na din ito, no? Kasama kasi dito may mga sa Filipinas Heritage, meron silang propaganda papers papers ng propaganda movement, no? So that's yun para sa dito sa Pilipinas, no? Abroad, to add siguro mayroon din yung for those interested in environmental history, where kung saan ako nanggagaling, ay helpful din yung Biodiversity Heritage Library. So hindi lang siya publications meron ding mga personal manuscripts dito, no? So if you're familiar of certain scientists, no, during the American period, there are personal papers here, journals, correspondence, no, dito sa Biodiversity Heritage Library. So sometimes yung ibang mga repository, no, you really have to explore. Madalas ang alam natin available ay mga publications lang during that time, but if you go through it, talagang isa-isahin mo, there are also archival manuscripts, no, personal papers.
Meron ding ilan siguro yung mga independent scholars din, may mga nag-upload ng mga documents. For example, kay Jim Richardson, mayroon siya personal website, may ilang mga dokumento on di Katipunan na naka-upload mula sa Arkibo General Militar, di ba, de Madrid, AGMM. So kailangan mo lang talagang maging creative and maparaan sa paghahanap ng digital archives, no, para matukoy mo kung saan mo kukunin. Sa inyong experience, mga sirs, meron ba kayong mga current projects that involve itong mga digital archives, itong mga archival materials? Tapos kung meron man, ano yung, for example, mga challenges na na-encounter ninyo in doing research using digital archives? Si Hobie, ikaw muna.
Okay. Well, I've got an ongoing project, for instance, on local government officials in the 1600s, and I'm using digital materials that I have from the Archivo General de Indias in Seville. These are colonial grants for positions. I was thinking more of a pro rather than a challenge. One very nice thing about it is that since I have the files, I'm able to share it with my team of undergraduate researchers, and then I've taught them how to read the 1600s handwriting, and then they encode, and every week we discuss, and it gets a lot of work done, and I get to have it's a fun experience to work with people on the research. So hindi masyadong solo yung work all the time.
Sa inyo po, Sir Rowell?
Siguro yung isang share ko yung isang research project ko about an environmental history paper na ginagawa ko, pero yung period niya contemporary Philippines, no? So post 1946 Philippines, no? At siguro isa sa pinaka-challenging talaga nito using the digital archives, hindi talaga masyadong marami yung materials about contemporary Philippines, at least for the topic na nire-research ko ngayon, no? Walang problema sa mga publications, mga government reports, no? Kasi available naman siya kahit contemporary period. But if we are, for instance, looking for personal papers, no, official correspondence or official personal correspondence ng mga taong gusto nating makita, napakahirap, no? Because they are not yet available. Dahil siguro bago pa lang, no? At hindi pa pasok sa intellectual property na restrictions, no? So that's one challenge for those working on contemporary period, especially kung may mga papers talaga na may mga topics talaga na kailangan ng iba pang mga dokumento na hindi pa ginagamit, no, as ating research. So that's one challenge that I encountered for this particular paper about post 1946 environmental history in the
Okay.
Philippines.
Yung isa naman, I think nabanggit ko to kanina. May isa akong paper na ginawa on American scientific institutions during the colonial period. Very useful yung UMich, University of Michigan. Yung mga reports of the Governor Generals. Apakadami. Ang dami-dami, doon mo pwedeng makita yung mga yung mga hahanapin mo, no. So, at least merong idea yung ating mga viewers on specific periods, ano yung specific digital archives that they can consult or they can go to. Ngayon tayo galing tayo sa UP Department of History. Ang next question na gusto kong tanongin is meron bang ano yung mga steps ng Department of History in order to introduce the students, para both undergraduate and graduate students, to these types of sources and digital archives, especially now na very useful ang digital archives in the context of lockdowns and in the pandemic. Meron bang steps yung ating department? Sige po.
Siguro I can speak as the coordinator or the head of the department's research committee na kasama ko si Hobby sa committee na ito, no. So one of the projects that we are currently doing is this repository, sort of master list, no, of archives that feature Philippine materials, no. So isa ito sa yung ginagawa natin ngayon, ito yung aming proyekto, no.
You have 26 now.
Compile namin, tapos ang plano dito is hindi lang siya compilation, magbibigay din kami ng mga guidelines, ano yung mga ma-expect na dokumento dito, no. So ano ba iba mga features, no, para magamit talaga kasi madami nga parang master list nga of online archives, no. Siguro yung first step or first phase ng project na ito ay nakasentro sa amin muna. Because yung idea dito, we have to know, kahit kaming mga teachers, kahit yung mga faculty ay nangangapa din, no. So what we currently do is we gather information, no. We attend workshops, for instance. We have informal discussion kami ni Hobby at ibang mga members ng research committee, no. Ano kung may mga additional information. So yung first step ng ginagawa namin ay nasa stage pa lang din namin, so that when we present this, at least may masagot din namin yung mga questions regarding this master list, this repository, no. The intention of our committee is to make it available first sa faculty ng Department of History for parang testing for ourselves. At least kung may mga ibang concerns, ay ma-address pa muna yung mga concerns na ito, no. But eventually, we want to have this we want this portal to be available sa aming mga estudyante, undergraduate. Although personally, halimbawa, I already nag-start na akong i-share ito for my students, no. Siguro ganun din sa ibang mga professor na sa ibang colleagues natin, no. They start sharing this kind of research method sa kanilang mga estudyante, no. Pero yun nga, yun pa lang, yung initial step pa lang. But hopefully, we can gather more info, no, and then maayos ito, no, at maibigay at mai-present sa mas malawak na audience, I hope before the year ends, no. Kung nakalimutan ba ako, Hobby, sa project natin?
And that is before the year ends. I was thinking,
sana ito ay no, siguro ma-upload sa website siguro, no, yung mga links ng
kahit link lang, parang separate site siguro siya, at least
Oo.
nakalink sa ating
nakalink sa website natin. Kasi magagamit mas lalo na ng mga graduate students natin. Marami sa graduate students natin ay teachers din sa mga ibang academic institutions. So, alam naman natin, ang trust ngayon, for example, ng basic education is mas primary sources ang approach. So, maganda yung initiative ng department na to start na with making the materials available to students, especially yung students ng department na nagtuturo sa basic education level. Kasi yan ang question sa parang pahirapan na kanya-kanyang maghagilap ng mga sources. So, kailangan mo talagang maging creative pagdating dyan, no? Mahirap siguro na project to, sir, no? Pero na-digitize naman, parang kokolate na lang, parang ganon.
Siguro talaga, I think yung pinag-usapan na namin ni Hobie ito, parang yung amin talagang project ay ito yung immediate lang itong compilation ng mga website, but I think ang pinaka useful na project talaga ay to create our own digital history archives. No? So na hindi siya naka-anchor sa iba pang mga portal. Ibig sabihin yung mismong UP History Department o at least within UP, no, makapag-start na ma-digitize yung nasa kung ano mang meron tayong dokumento, no, at maging available ito, no. So hindi lamang yun yung aming long-term project ni Hobie na sana ay maging reality, no. Kasi kahit may wala ng pandemic, I think useful itong proyektong ito, no, para sa mga students and researchers of history, of Philippine history.
Kasi yung mga ibang...
I think it also...
sige, Hobie, go Hobie.
I think it also helps in keeping the documents safe. Like, so we had a large fire, for instance, some years ago, and a lot was lost. But if we are able to put the materials online, that actually helps give us a backup somewhere else. That even if something happens to the originals, we still have the material.
Totoo yun. Yung sa FC, no, ang daming nawalang mga materials doon, sayang na hindi na-digitize, tapos nasunog yung mga hard copy, no. So, wala na. Wala ka ng kopya. Okay. Halos isang oras na yung lumipas sa atin ang discussion. Kulang talagang isang oras yung pag-i-explore pa lang nung mga websites na pinakita ni Hobie na dinemo. Ang daming bagay na pwede pang pag-usapan dun eh. Kung paano siya ina-navigate, etc. That's another topic in itself, no? Siguro ngayon na tayo magtatapos na sa ating programa, siguro mga final points na lang na pwede nating i-impart sa ating mga online viewers. Para dyan sa segment na yan, magtungo tayo sa ating pagtatasa. Okay, Sir Ruel, Sir Hobie, sagutin siguro natin yung question na with the current context and the adjustments to the yung so-called new normal, hopefully after the pandemic, no? How do you envision digital archives vis-a-vis research work in the academia? Ano yung talagang the ultimate dream? Parang gano'n ba? How do you envision digital archives in the Philippines at yung gamit niya para sa ating mga Filipino researchers, mga students natin sa universities? Siguro unahin natin si Sir Ruel.
Siguro for that, gusto kong i-echo yung mga sinasabi din ng mga scholars at historians about digital history, that this is the archives of the future. By being the archives of the future, it radicalized the methodology of archival research, no? And I think in the future, sana ma-materialize na yung ma-materialize dito sa ating bansa yung most promising feature ng digital history, and that is to break down the barrier, no? To make archival materials, Philippine archival materials, more accessible to the Filipino people.
Yun, sige, more accessible, yan ang lagi nating tatandaan, no? How about kay Sir Hobie? Ano naman ang inyong nai-envision when it comes to digital archives and research work in the academia?
Well, hopefully, I guess if it's successful, the type of research environment I imagine is one where people don't have to come to Manila for their sources, and the people in general, we don't have to go abroad for our sources either. And in that way, achieve a little bit of the democratization that you mentioned. I think things will be different, no? When we step, when hindi na tayo nasa archive exchanging our ideas there, and we're exchanging our ideas online. Hopefully, in the change, you can find something that's productive also.
Okay. So, ako naman, sususugan ko yung sinabi nila Sir Ruel at ni Sir Hobie kanina na malaki talaga yung potential ng digital archives when it comes to research. It's very convenient. We have this ultimate dream of democratizing yung sources, but there are several levels of challenges to that, no? When it comes to training on how to navigate online websites kung saan uploaded courses, and of course yung accessibility ng mga documents. Ang isang gusto ko din point na siguro i-emphasize as a final point to our online viewers is that we've started already at nabanggit nila Sir Ruel na the history department in UB is already starting to collate and gather centralized digital sources and archives to be accessible to be made available to our students, no, to the public. But one point na sigurong maganda din i-emphasize is yung funding. We have to reiterate to our government as well that whatever public policy that government may undertake stems from research. And yung research na yan, ang lifeblood ng research is what are the sources used for reliable and credible research work, di ba? Digital archives has a very good potential of providing multitude of sources for researchers and research papers. So magandang ma-highlight din sana na for our government officials and for the future government din, na bigyang tuon din yung research aspect, especially in research universities, kaya nga tinawag na research universities, bigyan tuon yung pondo, ganyan, yung digitization project, no? To continue the potential of digital archives, no? So yun naman yung take away ko dito, at maraming salamat sa aking mga guests, si Sir Ruel at Sir Hobie.
Thank you for inviting us.
Very, very interesting tong topic natin for tonight. Dami, for sure, at sa mga viewers natin, marami, nakikita ko nga yung mga nagla-like, tinitingnan ko yung mga pangalan, parang, mga naging kaklase ko to sa mga naging estudyante siguro ni Sir Ruel, tapos mga naging kaklase namin ni Hobie sa mga graduate courses na interesting kasi yung yung saan mo makukuha yung online source, especially ngayon na ongoing ang semester, remote learning, tapos saan ka kukuha ng mga batis para sa inyong mga papel. Thank you very much, Hobie and Sir Ruel. Mauulit po. Gaya na nabanggit ko, abangan natin ang episode on environmental history. At si Sir Ruel uli ang ating may imbitahan na guest. At very thankful tayo nakasama na si Sir Ruel dahil ang dami niya klase today and napaunlakan niya ang ating imbitasyon. Thank you very much, sirs. At sa ating mga online viewers, thank you very much. This has been episode 30 of Throwback Kasaysayan. We'll see you next Thursday for episode 31 of Throwback Kasaysayan. So that's it for tonight. Good evening to everyone.
Good night.
Good night.